Welcome to Blended Scotch Reviews, Episode 11. This is Stab the Dragon, coming to you from Fort Worth, Texas on Monday, April 28th, 2025, with Cutty Sark Blended Scotch Whiskey. Limited edition. Just the facts. This is an 80 proof or 40% ABV whiskey. The bottle has no age statement, so it has some whiskey inside that is 3 years old at the youngest, some perhaps older. This brand was created in 1923 by Berry Brothers and Rood. Its home distillery originally was the Glen Roth's distillery in the Speyside region, but is now blended and bottled at the Starlaw distillery. I paid $18.99 for this bottle in February of 2024. This brand is currently owned by a French company, Martiniquais Bardenay, whatever, which also owns Glen Moray. Tasting notes: mild and sweet, a bit of honey and citrus, but less fruity and sweet than J&B or Famous Grouse, either one. There's something just a little bit darker, earthier going on here. Maybe a vague, ashy peat smoke background on the nose and the palate. If J&B is the bright lights and disco music of the 80s, Cutty Sark is represented by dim lights and soft jazz, like you're in a film noir movie and it's raining softly outside in the dark in the 1920s during Prohibition, and you're at a speakeasy. That's Cutty Sark. My score was an 82. Letter grade for drinkability, a B+. My recommendation: I still highly recommend Cutty Sark for the person new to Scotch, coming over from bourbon or American or Canadian whiskeys. I would never turn down a drink of Cutty if offered, and if someone wanted to gift me a bottle, I would gladly receive it. Consumed neat, I think I prefer this to J&B, maybe. I'll have to wait for the contest to see for sure. I like the earthy notes from the light peat smoke that tamps down on the sweetness and the fruitiness. The failure comes when it is mixed in a cocktail. In the 7-Up cocktail that I did, it kind of got lost. But we'll try another cocktail tonight and see what happens. Now for the details. History. I'm surprised they don't put the year 1698 on the bottle, as that's the year that Berry Brothers and Rood started business as a wine and spice importer. A lot of other whiskeys put ridiculous early dates on their bottles that goes back to the founding of some company that has really nothing to do with their whiskey. But here, it's got the 100-year anniversary thing. 100 years, celebrating 100 years of adventure. And so this really does make an effort to go back to when this whiskey was invented, and that is in 1923. They made a decision to start this blended whiskey, even though America was just starting the noble experiment of Prohibition. That famous clipper ship, Cutty Sark, was a real ship, and it had just been retired the year before in 1922. And back in its heyday in the 19th century, it was the fastest of the clipper ships, named for a line from the poem Tam O'Shanter by Robert Burns. The word comes from an archaic Scottish term meaning a short night shirt. In the poem, a farmer named Tam is chased by a witch wearing only a Cutty Sark. This whiskey was deliberately crafted as a light whiskey for the American palate and was still sold to America despite Prohibition by Bill McCoy, running cases out of Rum Row, just outside the 12-mile boundary off the Atlantic coast of New England and New York. Then, after Prohibition ended, sales of Cutty Sark exploded all across America. In 1961, Cutty Sark was the first Scotch to sell over 1 million cases in America, and therefore it was the #1 Scotch. In 2010, however, the Edrington Group bought Cutty Sark from Berry Brothers and Rood, and for a while it was a brother blend with the Famous Grouse, sharing many of the same single malts. In 1963, a small bottle of Cutty was smuggled onto Mercury 9 spacecraft by astronaut Gordon Cooper. So, Cutty Sark continues the adventure in outer space. Today, Cutty Sark does not make it to the top 20 list of Scotch whiskies, according to any poll that I've seen. So for history, 5 points for the Cutty Sark. Bottle label and marketing. I found some ads on YouTube from 11 to 17 years ago with Greek subtitles. So this was obviously a Greek campaign to sell Cutty Sark in Greece. But the commercial itself was in English. The ads were weak club ads that I really didn't like, and a couple from sailing ships that could have been good had they been developed more. One ad from just a year ago that was set to rap music was totally ineffective. I don't know what they were thinking other than welcome to the new Scotland, I guess. I do remember this iconic bottle from my youth and the print ads in my dad's hunting and news magazines. Those ads were effective because they have stayed with me through half a century or more. The iconic bottle with its green glass, and I am a sucker for green glass, I admit it. The bright yellow label with the three-masted ship drawn on it, outstanding. It does not quite match the bright color pattern of J&B with those bright red letters, but the sailing ship makes up for it. My bottle, again, is this limited edition Centennial Celebration bottle. Let me get this up here. Maybe you can see that. So it was emphasizing 100 years of Cutty Sark from 2023 to 1923. 100 years of adventure. You'd have thought they could have had an ad campaign for that involved an actual sailing ship. Sailors getting off the ship, going to a tavern with a fair young lassie awaiting. Oh well. 4 points because of that missed opportunity. And the bottle, as most of these blended scotches are, is a twist-on cap. Appearance. This whiskey is a very pale straw yellow. And I tend to prefer darker whiskeys. Texas whiskeys are my thing, and some of those are extremely dark. So only 2 points for appearance. Composition. Stephen Woodcock is the master blender, and this whiskey is now blended and bottled at the Starlaw Grain Distillery, also known as Glen Turner Distillery. And on the back side of the bottle, it says Bathgate, West Lothian, Scotland. Single malts contributing to this blend include the Macallan, Highland Park, Bunnahabhain, and Glen Ross. And the grain whiskey comes mainly from North British and Invergordon. But it says that 40 whiskeys go into this blend. The whiskeys are blended over a 21-day marrying process. That's a long wedding. And the whiskey is aged in American oak casks and first fill ex-sherry casks. One site that I checked said the majority of the single malts were Speyside, but if the main single malts in here is Bunnahabhain, well, that's Islay. Highland Park and Macallan are both Highlands, and Glen Ross is the Speyside. So maybe there's just more Glen Ross whiskey in here than the others, perhaps because now Bunnahabhain's not peated, but Highland Park is a little bit. Macallan, I don't think is. So I don't know. I guess Glen Ross may be the majority of the whiskey or of the malt in here. So for composition, though, 13 points. Nose. Light and fruity. Sweet. Actually, just a little bit malty. But here, I get an undertone of earthiness or ash. And it's very faint. But I do this because the last one I reviewed was J&B. So I'm kind of in my head comparing the two. And when we do the competition next time, it'll be between these two whiskeys. But I'm getting this earthiness that may be peat from the Highland Park. But overall, it's a very pleasant nose. 8 points. And my nose is really inadequate for sniffing whiskeys. But usually with scotches, I can tell something. Most bourbons I can't smell. Some Texas whiskeys I can smell. Taste. The all-important palate. Cheers. Mild and sweet. A bit of honey and citrus. I think it's less fruity and sweet than J&B or Famous Grouse. There is something just a little bit darker, earthier going on here than J&B. And I think there's, some of that peat smoke from the Highland Park maybe in the background here. But it's not a thin line of it. It's more of a vague fog of earthiness, of peat smoke maybe. Famous Grouse, you would think, oh, there's no peat in there. Well, Famous Grouse has got Highland Park as well. And if you study it, there really is a thin, hard line. It's hard to find, but once you find it, it's noticeable, of peat smoke in Famous Grouse. J&B, however, none. None that I could tell at all. But here, it's this vague, ashy peat smoke in the background. It's really quite pleasant. That's one reason I really like Cutty Sark. So it's not well defined. It's a background note, but it affects the whole, and that makes it subtly different from J&B. J&B is brighter. It's the party whiskey that brings up the bright lights and the disco music. But Cutty Sark is lower and more sultry, like you're in that film noir murder mystery. It's in the 1920s, and you're coming out of some speakeasy, and the jazz piano players in the background playing some blues. Yeah, that's what I get when I drink Cutty Sark. So if you tie your smells from your past, your tastes from the past, and it brings up some memories, that helps in drinking a whiskey. So 21 points for taste. Mouthfeel, burn, and finish. It's a moderate mouthfeel, certainly nothing real rich. Some slight tingles for the burn, but really it's very smooth. The tingles last for just a little bit, so it's a short to moderate finish. The flavors slowly fade away, but if that ash, that smokiness in the background lingers a bit, those earth tones. So mouthfeel, burn, and finish, 11 out of 15 points. Now, neat or mixer. I like it neat, and I did make a 7-Up and lime cocktail with this the other day, and it seemed like the whiskey got lost. I simply couldn't taste it. So of course I had to add more. And so instead of basically one shot of Cutty Sark in this cocktail, I really ended up with 2. Then I could taste the darker notes, and it was very nice. So tonight I wanted to try a different cocktail. I went to the Cutty Sark website, and it suggested doing a Godfather. So I've got 1 shot of Cutty Sark, an amaretto. I've got some Di Serono. Now, Di Serono amarettos are very, very sweet, and almost too sweet for me. So I just add a little bit, nowhere near as much as, sometimes they talk about a 1-for-1 ratio or 0.5 to 1. I don't even do that because Di Serono is just almost sickeningly sweet for me. Okay. So we now have the Godfather. Scotch whiskey with an amaretto and ice. And we'll see what that does with Cutty Sark. And that is pretty good. I put about enough amaretto in there because I don't want it very sweet. So that's pretty good, but it still pretty much wipes out the flavor of Cutty Sark. I really do not taste the Cutty Sark in there. So I think for me, I mean, it's not bad, but when I do a cocktail, I like to be able to taste the whiskey. So neat or mixer, I'm only going to give it 3 points because I've tried 2 cocktails now with Cutty Sark, and it just kind of disappears. Now I'm going to add the last of my glass in there, see if that helps. Put a little bit more Cutty Sark. That definitely helped. So Cutty Sark just doesn't stand up in our cocktail real well. So I'm going to say 3 points for neat or mixer. 5 points, neat, but that mixer score brings it down. Price, value, and availability. Total Wine has it for $26.99 for a 1.75 liter. And then Specs had it for $28.39 for a 175, or $20.20 for a 750. Total Wine didn't have the 750, but Specs did. Goody Goody has it for $26.99 for the 1.75 and $18.49 for the 750. So at under $20, I think this is a good value for a price-taste combination. And for the prices of the 1.75, that's a good price for a party or a bar. This whiskey is always available. Has a bit more of a broader range, I think, than J&B when you throw in the 12-year bottle and the Prohibition bottle at 100 proof that you can get. I had to order my Prohibition bottle. So all in all, price, value, and availability, I'm going to say 10 points out of 10. Bonus, 5 points. Bonus because I simply love their story, their history, and that doggone sailing ship on the bottle. Give me green glass and a sailing ship and I'm sold. That's just how it is. So that gives me a total score of an 82 for Cutty Sark. My letter grade is a B+ for drinkability. My recommendation, I highly recommend Cutty Sark for the person new to Scotch, coming over from the bourbon or American or Canadian whiskey side. I would never turn down a drink of Cutty if offered, and if someone wanted to gift me a bottle, I would gladly receive it. Consumed neat. I like it. I don't know if I would prefer the J&B. I'm going to have to do that contest between J&B and Cutty Sark. I like the earthy notes from the light peat smoke that tamps down on the sweetness and fruitiness. But that failure comes with the cocktail. It just kind of gets lost in there. You lose that Cutty Sark Scotch flavor. And so as much as I enjoy it, I'm not sure that it's going to do real well in the tournament. I don't know. All right, let's go to the single malt parent, and that is Bunnahabhain right here. This is one of the parent single malts, And so I'm going to do a pour of this and just see what I can taste. All right, there's the Bunnahabhain, and it's not much darker, if any. Yeah, it's a 12-year, but it's not any darker than the Cutty Sark. And that's how Scotch rolls, unless they add food coloring to it. And you know what? I think I can taste a little relationship there. Now the finish on this is much stronger. The burn, the mouthfeel, that's all stronger. But the initial flavor that hit my palate, I can see the resemblance to Cutty Sark. So that's a good matchup. I can see where that comes from now. And that's what I like to do. I like to check out the blends and see what the single malts that are related to them do. Well, that's it for Blended Scotch Reviews tonight. This is Stab the Dragon, out here.